how much did cars cost back then? I think your
Yeah.
sister did. How long did it take to get to Hilo from Kona in the 30s?
1937, by Kau, I made it in 2.5 hours. And the fellow who was sitting next to me was rolling a Bull Durham. He was so nervous, all the tobacco went on the floor. It was probably one of the fastest trips to Hilo at that time. It would take you normally 3.5 hours or so. And I remember earlier as a kid, one of the things you could always count on was having a flat tire. And we'd start here to get to Hilo about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My mother wasn't particularly keen on taking me Humulo, the Hawaii, out of Kona. So we go to Hilo to get the Maui or the Matsonia, one of the Matson freighters, to go to town. And they left at 4. We'd start here at 6 in the morning, and we'd get to Hilo at about 2:30 or somewhere there. And we'd stop along the way, usually this side of Pahala in a Kukui Grove, and have a picnic, lunch, and stop at Pahala and get lemon soda water. It's a treat on the way to Hilo.
Was there any flat tires along any of these trips over to Hilo?
Yeah, you can usually count on a flat tire, and it took you anywhere between 6 and 7, 8 hours.
Yeah.
A lot of those, in those days, a lot of the roads weren't paved.
How would you repair the flat tires?
You always carried about 2 spares, for one thing. And there was a little can that came with some glue and little patches, and it had a grate on the top of it that you could make your repairs in the field.
What were the roads like in Kona during the 30s?
The what?
The roads.
Well, obviously they're a lot narrower than they are today. The road through Puawa was paved in the early 30s. Before that, that was gravel road all into Waimea. And in the Waimea area, I remember ducking in the car because of the wind and the dust blowing all over the place. The Palani Road wasn't paved until 1938. That was just a gravel road that meandered down there, and Ali Drive wasn't paved until 38. Those roads were paved with WPA money, with federal works project from the Roosevelt period. The road between Honaunau and Napopo wasn't paved. These through here were paved, but they were all very, very narrow. The road through way down south, and you get into Kau, those were gravel roads until you got down into Wahinu. But most of the roads right within Kona here were paved, but as I say, very narrow.
How old did you have to be to get a driver's license during the 30s?
15.
Isn't that the same age for now?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I got mine in 1936. The day I was 15. Asked me how long I've been driving. I was in Honolulu at the time. I went up 4th Street, and a police officer asked me how long I'd been driving, and I said for 2 years. And I guess he thought I handled myself fairly well, and we got up to Beretania Street, and he said, turn left here and go back to the station. So I'd had to, I guess I showed that I'd had enough experience. Of course, in those days, there were so few people on the road driving, it wasn't that much of a hazard for a younger person.
Now it's like a...
Well, it's a contest once you get on the road. Yeah.
Were there a lot of horses on the road back in those days?
No. We in those days, when we went up the mountain, we'd start down here at about 6:30 or 7 in the morning. Horses were kept down below here, and we'd have our own my father and I owned horses right here, and men would come up in the morning, we'd get our horses here, and we'd go up, we'd ride along the road in front of Managos over to the far end of the Ranch Shopping Center, and that road that goes up there, we'd go up. We'd work up there until we'd come back around 4:30 or 5 and come down that same road and ride along the road. We drove cattle along that road. The whole road was times filled with cattle. It wasn't much of a deterrent really as far as traffic flow was concerned, because there just wasn't traffic in those days. There wasn't much traffic. In the 30s, only occasionally you'd see someone that depended upon either a horse or a donkey for transportation, riding transportation. I don't think there were, I should say probably, there were very few coffee fields, coffee farmers that didn't have a burro, a donkey. And primarily it was used to carry the coffee out of the fields in harvest time and carry fertilizer in during the fertilizing period. And in some instances they were used for riding, not too often though.
How long have you been driving?
I've been driving
Something like 63 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. No. 53 years.
Oh.
God, you made me 10 years older than I am. I'm having trouble already accepting the fact that the day after tomorrow I'm going to be 70. I wasn't 69, I was 68 for 2 years. 70 seemed like too much of a step.
I know. That was very funny. What was the speed limit back then?
School areas was 25, commercial areas. Those areas where today it's 55, it was, what was the terminology? Safe and prudent. You could go up to 70 miles an hour if the road was wide, and that if you were driving safely and prudently. There was no limit at that time, the speed limit.
How fast was a car back then?
70, 80 miles an hour. The difficult thing was to find a road that you could drive on that would be straight enough and smooth enough for that kind of speed. So most of the speeds were limited to the lousiness of the roads, the curves of the road.
So that was the reason why many people diverged from driving that fast.
Yeah.
Did many people ride bikes or horses back then?
Not, as I said earlier, not too many horses, very few bicycles. I think probably for Kona, the steepness and the narrowness of the roads discouraged people from going on bicycles.
How did people travel to Honolulu and the mainland?
It all depended how you went. If you went by boat, you took the Humuula or the Hawaii out of Kailua, or Napopo. Napopo, they quit coming into Napopo for passengers around 1928-29. Kailua became the port of Kona, and that is where you usually pick the ship up to go to Honolulu. And later, when airplanes started to fly, you either went to Hilo. Most Kona people went to Upolu Point in Kohala, North Kohala. The Army had a field there, and in-island airways used to come into Upolu Point. So we used to drive to Upolu and catch a plane there to go to Honolulu.
When did Kauai High starting to be a port, like it is today, for West Hawaii?
Just prior to highway going in. I'd say around 50, 40. The war is what really stopped it. Stopped the use of Kailua. Kailua freight would come in. Shipping took place in Kailua until the war. Then we shipped out of Kaihai. Then after the war, the pier in Kailua was developed for shipping cattle, and we shipped there for another 5 or 7, 10 years maybe. And Kaihai then became, around the middle 60s, the port of this side of the island. And I think that the Kaihai has become the port of this island. It started that about 4 years ago when the Hyatt started. Kaihai is going to be the port of this island, not just this side of the island.
When did Old Airport got built? Before? Because you said Upulu, Poiapi, Kohala was the major airport on this side of the island. But when was Old Airport?
The Old Airport was built in, I'd say around, I'm not too sure, 46, 40, somewhere around the late 40s, I would say.
So the airport was like built 26 years before the airport that we have now is in operation.
I remember flying into Kailua. Bobby Hind had a L5, and we flew from Puawa. We landed on a little strip on the lower side of the old airport. It was just looked like a paved straight piece of road, and that was in 1946, 47. So the new airport hadn't been built at that time, it was sometime after that.
So they built the new airport because of the advert of jet aircraft now?
There was a need for extending the airport, and the extension would have created more noise and was limited in its size at the old airport.
Was a aircraft at Old Airport, like DC-3 aircraft coming in landing from Honolulu, or Air Island aircraft coming in there?
Yeah. DC-3s came in. Hawaiian Airlines had DC-3s, and then the Convairs came in there, which were a larger turbojet
pressurized
plane.
aircraft.
Pressurized and turbojet. Turboprop, I should say. Yeah.
Let's see. We already passed major harbors. Where were the major airports? And we already passed that one too. Yeah. Were there any trains here then?
You know, the last train that was in Kona was a railroad that was put in for gathering sugarcane to take to the mill in Honolulu, and that folded in 1926. But it was not a passenger train.
Yeah, because I see a lot of train tracks where they used to be, especially down Hualai Road.
Yeah.
Because when you drive down past this new rich subdivision down there, you see this big steep hill, and my dad says train track. Used to be.
Yeah.
Where were the what were the major kind of employment in Kona during the 30s? I think we are past that. Yeah, we did.
One thing that started in the early 30s with the construction of the Kona Inn was the tourist industry in Kona. There were other hotels in Kona prior to that, and some of them were tourist hotels, you might say. Miss Paris is up here. Walls Hotel in Kainaleo. They were sort of tourist-type hotels. Then there was Manago's here. Manago's still going. Kona Hotel in Abas. Okimoto had a hotel. There was a Yamashita Hotel up here. There were a whole lot of other hotels, but in those days, it took so long to come from the other side of the island, that a lot of these smaller hotels existed as overnight stops for the salesmen from Hilo, coming through representing Davies and American Factors and the big wholesale houses of Hilo.
So there was no like any kind of stores in Kona. So these representatives from these big companies came to Kona and tried to sell it to
These little stores.
Yeah.
There were a lot of stores in Kona. Everybody who had a living room the same level as the road, the living room turned into a store. Because there were no cars in those days. And so all of these little shops served those people who lived around them along the road.
So when did like KTA come to Kona? These big, humongous supermarkets come to Kona, as I can say.
KTA took over American Factors' building in Kailua, which was a wholesale outlet for Kona. And I guess they first came in about could be around the 1970 probably, maybe a little earlier. I wouldn't be too sure.
Yeah, because my parents have lived here since '72, and they were talking about that. Was there a lot of unemployment in Kona back then, in the '30s?
Yeah. Although a lot of the people, though, were at that time self-employed. So it's difficult to say how many people were unemployed when, in effect, really what was wrong was that they were not able to live adequately because they just didn't have the income. And because a lot of those that didn't have jobs all went somewhere else. Plantations, as I said earlier, Honolulu. There are a lot of people that went into professions. There are a lot of doctors. The first judge on the Territorial Supreme Court of Japanese ancestry, Morimoto, came from Kona. He was born just above here. A lot of judges, doctors, and other people, a lot of professional people came from Kona, which was sort of a drain of Kona during that period because of the lack of jobs.
Was there welfare, unemployment compensation, and food stamps back then?
No food stamps. There was welfare. Early 30s, some of the welfare was taken care of within the community, kind of thing, and then it became a territorial responsibility. Workman's compensation and that came about during that period.
What was the average wage in Kona during the '30s?
Well, we looking over our book, salaries anywhere from 30 up to a high of maybe $65. They had a house though, and well, of course, working on a ranch, you had as extras milk and meat, things of that kind.
Was this per day or per hour, that wage?
Per day. You were either paid by the day, like $1 a day, somewhere $1.50. You worked in those days. You worked a 6-day week. 5-day week came. 5.5-day week came around 1940, I guess. And everything was cheap though, cheaper in those days. 100 pounds of rice cost you something like $3.75. You know, and today you can't buy 10 pounds almost for that kind of price.
So when you say $30, is that a weekly wage or a monthly wage?
Monthly.
Monthly.
I came home in 1938 and my salary was $50 a month.
must be a lot of money compared to today, really.
Cost 15 cents to go to movies, you know, kind of thing. Gasoline was 15 cents a gallon and stuff like that. Everything was relatively cheaper. The other thing, though, that I was 19 when I came back, and I started buying my first life insurance when I was 20, on my $50 a month. I lived with my father here, my mother's in Honolulu. The only thing we had to spend money on was go to movies, you know. you had nothing to spend it on. So you were able to save something.
So how much could you save this like $50 a month?
I have no idea.
Yeah, no.
Being 19, 20 years old, that amount you saved was a very erratic amount. Sometimes there was nothing to save.
Was there, what kind of work was there for kids during the 30s?
Coffee picking, during coffee picking season, everybody in Kona practically was utilized in the coffee. Those who wanted to pick coffee, there was a job for them. There were a lot of the farms that had 6 acres, 5, 6 or more acres, would have a house that they boarded their pickers that were plantation people who would come over because they weren't too busy there. And they came to Kona and got a little extra money picking coffee. So during that time of year, there was, for those who wanted to pick coffee, there was enough employment for them. Summertime, we used to, on the ranch, hire kids and things to go up and help drive cattle and that kind of stuff. Off coffee season, we used to, off the busy time of harvesting and preparing coffee trees, we used to hire a number of people that would do fence work and that kind of stuff. So we usually had anywhere from 6 to maybe 8 or 10 extra people that were seasonal men that we had working for us.
Was there much tourism back then, and when did it become an important industry for Kona?
It started with the Kona Inn in 1928, and it just kept growing ever since.
Was the charter fishing industry, when did that start growing? Or when did that get into
Charter, the first person who had a fishing boat was Charlie Finlayson. He had 2 boats. The Armco, they were steel fishing boats. Henry Chi worked for him as crew first and captain of his second boat. Henry Chi, when Charlie Finlayson retired, he took over Charlie's boats and became the charter fisherman of that period. But it was started originally by Charlie Finlayson, I would think around 1929, 30, 31 probably, somewhere through there. I remember going out once with him, a bunch of us, the cousins and myself, and he always, when he went out, carried 2 pigeons. That was his communication. And when we were through fishing, he let out 1 pigeon, and he lived in a 2-storied house right where that group of restaurants is today, next to Hulihalawai. The pigeon would arrive home. His wife, I knew he was on his way home. If they caught something big and they wanted to get the information in quickly, they put a little note on the pigeon's leg and send it in. Unfortunately, it was one-way communication. There was no bird that went back the other way. So that's how he communicated with the shoreline.
Let me see what. Never mind. What hotels and restaurants were in Kona back then?
Manago, Yamashita, Okimoto, the early 30s, Paris, Ella Paris's, Roy, Walls Hotel, the Kona Inn, Inaba's, and there was another place in Kailua, which I think Ocean View had some rooms at one time.
Now it came back to me. When did the char fishing industry become an important industry to Kona, including tourism?
Well, it started as a part of tourism, as something for people going to the Kona Inn to do, and probably didn't really become an industry, big industry, until around the late 60s. A good deal of the activity in charter fishing probably was prompted by Peter Fithian, who was manager of the Kona Inn at one time, and he was the one that started the International Billfish Tournament.
Was there racial prejudice in employment back then?
No, I don't think so. I think we all recognized ourselves as being racially different, but I think the one thing I think we had that becomes kind of lost with numbers is a respect for each other.
Who got the best jobs back then?
The what?
The best jobs.
One job that a lot of people wanted was a government job, working for the county or something. County also was a part of welfare. When I first got on the Board of Supervisors in 1948, we would have on the county payroll in the latter part of November and the beginning of December around 130 people. This is a way of giving the people here some money for Christmas. Eventually it became, the welfare took over and there wasn't that need for that kind of, it became too expensive for the county to handle that kind of operation that way. Everybody would like to work in a bank or something like that because that was kind of a prestigious kind of position. And hotel business, there were a few people that I think liked that. In those days, you did more or less what you wanted, kind of thing. If you liked being outdoors, a lot of people wanted to be cowboys. A lot of people obviously didn't. I think the one thing that a lot of people didn't want to be were coffee farmers because of the drudgery that was involved, and this eventually caught up with the younger ones. The older people, more or less, were so locked into it that it was very difficult for them to get into something else. A lot of them were very, during their off seasons, were carpenters, stonemasons, a lot of very capable building type of people here in Kona.
Was there many banks in Kona during the 30s?
There was the Bank of Hawaii at Mauka here, right on the same spot it is in today, in their new building, which was built in '29, and the Bishop Bank was in the building that organic food building is and stuff with all the colored, right next to Kamagaki's. That was Bishop Bank, which is now today the First Hawaiian Bank. The Bank of Hawaii, is that 29. I think probably that building was built a little later. In the early 30s, the bank building was right next to Hongwanji, between Hongwanji and the bank building that's there today.
I'm on education. Did you attend school during the 30s?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
I went to school in Honolulu.
Please describe them.
Well, I went to Kona School in Honolulu, and then I went away to prep school in New England, in Connecticut. I was there for 4 years.
What year did you finish school?
1938. With the plan of going to university, and I say, it was awfully hard to leave Kona. I haven't left yet.
So you never went to a university?
No.
What hours did you attend school each day in the 30s?
We started at 8 and we were power at 2:30.
What kind of clothes did you wear in school?
We wore, I'd say up until we were 7th grade, we never wore shoes. This is the Punahou, and every time it rained at school, we took our shoes off, like to run around barefooted in the rain. We wore black and white saddle shoes and what they called silamokus, blue jeans with patched square pockets, and we wore shirts and ties, long sleeve shirts and ties.
Was that Punahou?
Yeah, but you'll find in the early pictures here in Kona that a lot of the kids wore shirts, short-sleeved, usually no aloha shirts in those days. They didn't come until well after the war. Informality came during the war. Before that, when we used to go down to the Kona Inn on Sundays, we wore flannel slacks and a wool jacket, necktie, and I look back and how the hell did we ever do it? It was miserable, hot, and it was during the war then that all of that formality was set aside, fortunately, and we went in the period of aloha shirts.
Did they have fans back there, back then, at these, at school and at Aloha, at the Kona Inn and all these places?
No.
No, they didn't?
You had high ceilings. You notice this house has fairly high ceilings. And you'll find that nearly all the old houses had those, so the heat rose and it kept you in the cooler part of the room.
This is what I'm going to need when I grow up. Just a little joke. Did they have a cafeteria in your school, or did you have to take your own lunch?
Took their own lunch. Cafeteria probably started at the latter part of the 30s, I would imagine.
And then that during that period of time, they started to have subsidies for the low-income people.
No, that started well after the war, I think. Yeah. Probably up until the end of the 30s, kids who lived within 2 miles of school or 5 miles of school walked to school every day.
So there was no like any kind of bus.
There were buses, but those came from kids who lived either beyond 2 miles or something like that. They were bused to school. Kona being the only high school, all the high school kids practically were bused because they came from Kalawa and way down south.
What was your favorite and worst subject in school in the 30s?
Grammar. I like things like math and geography and things of that kind. Physics, those are great.
happened to your kids who got in trouble in school? What happened to kids who got in trouble in school?
They were probably, some of them were kicked out. I know smoking. We used to get kicked out, put on probation. Um, they weren't the things that kids could get into trouble in that they are today. They weren't. If someone got into trouble, it wasn't as serious a thing, I don't think, as those things kids get involved in today. And I don't think the penalties were probably quite as great as they might be. I guess you were sent home for a week or something like that, but there were no real severe penalties, as I recall. You go to the principal's office. I remember that.
What did you do? Just asking. To get you into trouble with the principal at school. Just was asking.
My Latin teacher at Ponoho asked me if it was clear, and I said it was clear as mud. I ended up in Mr. Slade's office.
No.
That's a good example.
Did your class go on any outings or field trips, and where?
Not too much transportation was bad. Difficult, I should say. So there were very few